Knoxville Game Design, September 2018. Knoxville Gaming Convention Recap and Ludum Dare entries. With Jacob, Dylan, Levi, and Joe.
Welcome everyone to Knoxville Game Design for September 2018. We are developers in the Knoxville and East Tennessee area. We get together once a month to talk about our game projects and topics in the games industry. This month we have 3 people in the meeting. First of all, we have Dylan Wolf in Lenoir City.
Hello.
And we have Jacob in Knoxville.
Hi.
And I'm Levi Smith in Oak Ridge, Tennessee. So this month we're going to go over 2 main areas. The first one will be our Ludum Dare entries that we created. We'll go over those. Then we're going to talk about the booth that we had at the Knoxville Gaming Convention last month at CreepyCon. So Jacob, did you have your game up and ready to show off this month?
I don't, since I can't really do Hangouts or do this correctly on my actual computer.
Oh, okay.
So I won't really be able to show it today.
I had some video of it if you want to talk through it. Let me share out my screen here. Share. And let's go up here. Okay. Let me see if I can make this bigger. Can you see what I'm showing on? Okay. Yeah, so you created a game called Fire.
Yes. So you're trapped within this, closed off forest area. And so you gotta escape the forest before it burns down and you die.
Yeah. It looks really cool. I like the fire effects that you had in it. And
what?
The fire effects, because it starts out like there's just fire around the starting area, then the fire just keeps expanding and keeps expanding.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that was...
So, the concept was that the fire would keep growing and consume the forest, and then, you die, and any, things that were on fire you touch, you die. But I don't know if it, worked all the way through, because I couldn't quite find the sweet spot, and how I played is I just kind of walked through the forest, through the familiar bits to find where I knew, instead of following the trails. So that might be something to do with it.
Yeah. I liked how you had, the 3 keys. The objective was to collect the 3 keys, and you sort of had, a path made out of rocks that led you to each of the keys. And then there's, this gate, which I think... I guess you're supposed to escape through the gate after you collected the 3 keys.
Yeah, you're supposed to touch the gate, and then the game is supposed to tell you you won, and then it would exit the game.
Yeah, I thought it was really good. I liked how you did the movement in the game. I think you're using the updates in Game Maker, so it felt really smooth when you pressed the movement keys.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I thought the fire effects were nice, and I noticed you had a lot of nice other graphics in there, like a campground area and some tombstones and some things like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, very cool. Yeah, I enjoyed it. I don't know if Joe Miller is going to be on. He hasn't joined yet, has he? Joe made a game called Put What Where? And so basically in his game, I'll just do a short description of it. There's these boxes that come down this conveyor belt, and each of these boxes have an arrangement of smaller colored squares, and you have a target configuration that you're supposed to make up here. So you can just drag these little boxes around, and once you have one of these boxes in the same configuration as the target up here, I think you can deliver it. I think you just drag it up here. But it starts out pretty simple with just 3 colors, and the carts or whatever pallets come pretty slow. But you get to the point where you get more colors and they become more complex, and you really got to look out for which spaces you have open and available. So pretty neat game. The objective is to not let these like pallets stack up too much over here. And I can hear myself talking in the background. Yeah, and you get scored based on how many of these you complete. And I think and how quickly you complete these, or maybe it's based on the configuration. Can I mute myself here? My game was called Crazy Delivery. I don't know if I have any gameplay up and ready to go. Let me pull up the Ludum Dare site. And basically in my game you select one of 3 delivery trucks. Each truck has a unique properties. So like the smallest one here, it goes really fast, but it doesn't have great turning. You have a medium-sized delivery truck. It turns slowly, but has slow speed. Then you got the bigger truck, which is obviously bigger. It's harder to navigate, but it does have pretty good speed as well. I got the idea for this game from Crazy Taxi. And also with these 3 different delivery trucks, they have different capacities. The smallest one can only carry 2 packages. The largest one can carry 6. So there's pros and cons to each of the vehicles. You pick the smallest one, it can go really fast, but you can't load up as many packages. So basically you pick up these different colored packages and deliver them to the associated house of the same color. So you basically try to deliver all the packages within the time limit, which is set to 60 seconds. So I don't think I mentioned it earlier, but the theme for this Ludum Dare, which we mentioned in the last episode of Knoxville Game Design, was running out of space. So all these games were based on running out of space. So next, we're going to talk a little bit about the Knoxville Game Design booth at CreepyCon, Knoxville Gaming Convention. So, Dylan, I know before the convention, you actually wrote an article right here about how you used the Kindle Fire for your display, and also the Intel Compute Sticks.
Yeah, I haven't actually written anything on the Intel Compute Sticks, but essentially what the Compute Stick is it's this little, I think you can get one for like $160, $170. It'll run basic Unity games, and it's a little thing that looks a little bit larger than a Chromecast and runs Windows. So it's a really convenient way to just do demos on pretty much any TV.
Yeah, I know it did a really good job, like running Nox Runner. I know that's just a 2D game, so I'm actually interested in getting one myself just to see how it would actually handle 3D games. Because I know in Unity you can like turn down the graphics settings, so maybe it would be enough to run a 3D Unity game. I don't know.
I think so. Like, I get the sense it's a little bit underpowered for, compared to like a laptop or something, but it's probably, I would bet it's probably more than enough for the type of games that, we end up building, just because they're not.
Yeah, I don't know if you can see it on my screen right now, but I do have the Intel site pulled up.
Yeah.
And they range from different prices, so it isn't just like one. It isn't like a Raspberry Pi, one size fits all. You can, looks like they start from $121 to all the way up to like $470.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I can't. Like I said, I think I got a model that was like 150, 160. It may not be one that's current on here. I can't remember where I got it, to be honest. May have been like Amazon or Best Buy. But yeah, that's really convenient. one thing I make a point to do is I don't like running demos on my laptop or something, like something I'm logged in with other accounts and someone could, even if it's on my own like tablet or something, you can do less than you can do on a computer, but you can still if someone got a hold of it, they can still like rack up charges or something. So I just,
yeah, I know I had my laptops kind of behind the televisions, but still somebody could walk back there, and just the big clunky laptops are inconvenient as well. I know I tried setting up your Intel Compute Stick the first day.
Oh, yeah.
And it's a little bit it's nice because it's so small, and it just has like an HDMI on the back, and you just snap it in, and then you had like a USB hub that you plugged in. And I think from that USB hub, then you could plug in the keyboard and the mouse and all the game pads and everything.
Yeah, I basically had it set up so I could plug in all 4 of my retro links or the USB SNES controllers. That's a whole other tangent because I've got 2 types and they each map axes differently. So, like, I've since got 4 of the retro links so that they're all consistent. These are things you do have to think about. Like, again, it's probably not a big deal if the controllers are a little different. It's probably not a big deal if you're using a machine that you actually use and have your accounts on, but it just feels better to remove that one little glitch. But yeah, the article was basically setting up a Kindle Fire.
Mm-hmm.
Kindle Fires I like using for demos. I've got one that I used at McKay's, and I actually bought 2 other ones. The main gist is, like, you can usually find them pretty cheaply. Like, Woot is actually owned by Amazon, and if you watch from time to time, they'll do sales on Kindle Fire.
Yeah, I actually brought it up, Woot. I haven't ever been to Woot before, but yeah, it looks like they have a lot of refurbished tablets and things. So you said, I saw in your articles, like, yeah, just go to computers and tablets, and they have a lot of refurbished tablets on here. But like you mentioned, you gotta, I guess, watch out and watch when they have a deal or when they have stock, when they actually have the devices in stock. But yeah, like right here, they have this Amazon Fire 7-inch for $18, but they're all sold out.
And Amazon.com will actually do that in their deals, but I feel like they're really good for demos if you're running Android games, just because, like, you're not buying an off-brand tablet, you're buying one is going to be pretty decent at it, at running an application. That said, there are a couple issues you have to look out for. One is that if you buy an older, I think it was 2013, 2012, or before, which I have done, it doesn't run the most recent version of Unity, or Unity doesn't support Android that far back. So you have to recompile. I don't know if
that's like honeycomb or ice cream sandwich or.
I don't remember what it was. I think I made a note in the article because the 2 I just bought off of Woot for CreepyCon were like that, and I had to install Unity 5.5 and rebuild.
Because I didn't know that an Amazon Kindle could actually run Unity games. That actually surprised me.
Well, Kindle, okay, so the original Kindles, the ones that were like the black and white readers that were made to basically I don't want to say function like an ebook and just an ebook, are one thing. The Kindle Fire tablets are their line of Android tablets, which essentially, they've got an app store. They've kind of got their own little ecosystem, kind of like Google does. And that's, plus content and streaming and everything.
So with the Amazon Fire, you don't have to like jailbreak it or anything like that?
Nope. You
have to like sideload an APK?
You do, and you do if you don't register an account.
Oh, okay.
So like I can't just go out and install something off the App Store And I mentioned that in the article, like I explicitly didn't register an account. So again, that, there's not something linked up to my Amazon account or even a empty Amazon account. But yeah, the other nice thing is they have HDMI out on them, like a physical HDMI out port. So you either get, I can't remember what they're called. There's like there's two types. Like one's a micro or mini HDMI, and one is, I can't remember. It's some sort of USB.
Yeah.
You can buy an adapter for it, plug it up to a TV, and there's kind of like your display piece. So
Yeah. I know you wrote really good instructions for setting it up and everything. Yeah, we found out if you're not using the right power supply, it will crash when you try to run a Unity game, or it'll just like drain. It's like the Unity app takes so much power and everything, but just by itself, you can log in. It gives you like a Windows interface. You log in with an account. It's just like you're running Windows right there. It is a little bit slow, but when it was playing Nox Runner, I mean, it was playing fine. I mean, it worked.
Yeah, because I'm not doing anything really complicated there. But yeah, I think the issue is it's convenient. It actually uses a USB connector. I didn't realize that for its power, but if you use the wrong adapter, then it's not going to draw enough. I've had the same problem with Raspberry Pis where like I use the wrong adapter and it does weird things.
Yeah, because I always assumed like any like USB type adapter would work with anything else, but I guess you really got to make sure it's like got the right ampage and everything. And
yeah,
because I know like if I use like the wrong adapter on my phone, sometimes it'll pop up and say, "Hey, you're using the wrong adapter. Please use an official one for this device." And
yeah,
I don't know if you can actually blow up a phone or anything using the wrong adapter, but
I don't think so. Like I think essentially, I don't know enough about electricity to say, but like a higher amperage adapter will work on a lower amperage phone. It's just not going to pull as much. Mm-hmm. But yeah, if you're using a phone that or a tablet or a compute stick that needs more power than the adapter can give it, you're gonna have issues.
Yeah, because I know when I had the wrong adapter, when it started Unity, it would just go to input signal lost. It's just like, okay, I'm not getting enough juice, I'm shutting down. But yeah, going back to the tablets, I think those worked really well. Because I know you had 3 on display, and I was going to show some of these pictures, and let me share these out. But the thing about the tablets is, if they're $20, you really don't have to police them or anything. You don't want somebody walking off with one, but
right.
But if you do happen to lose one, it's like, well, you're out $20. I mean, it could. It's not like a $3,000 MacBook Pro. Sitting out there.
That was kind of my fear. And plus, I think it helps with, like, we've done a few of these, and I think we've all kind of found ways of making demos repeatable. So, I mean, that was what I was trying to do when I gave you the instructions. Like, I wanted something that I could set up, I could come back a year later and go, okay, here's exactly how to set up the booth, because that makes things go smoother for you. And I think it also makes the experience better for someone who's sitting down to play. They don't have to think as much about, okay, what do I need to do? What do I need to remember? Just pick up the controller and go.
Yeah, because I know I'll set up things, and then like the next year, it's like, oh, what did I do here? Like with my Raspberry Pi arcade stick, which I have a picture of somewhere in here. I was doing a scratch demo of a simple scratch game that I created with the bear catching honey, and I actually put the pin-out diagrams inside the case just in case I ever had to go back, and it's like, oh, was this thing wired up?
That would be rough. Like I like something that complicated, that I would worry that I would not hook that up right.
Yeah,
it's the exact type of thing I'm talking about.
it's once you have it going, it works fine. You just plug it in.
Yeah.
But yeah, trying to go back later and figure out how it was wired up can be kind of difficult. Yeah, sometimes I get these next buttons and sometimes they don't display. So this was like early on, like the first day of the booth. I guess you guys can see this. But yeah, I tried to get a picture in my mind, like what the booth would be. We had a 20-foot by 10-foot booth. I want to give a special thanks to Bradley Drake, who ran the Knoxville Gaming design or Knoxville Gaming Convention part of this.
Yeah.
So I think they're going to do, this was like the preview of it, and they had like us, Knoxville Game Design, Token Game Tavern, Level Up Games, also here in Knoxville. They were selling games and had some games on display, and also some like random, what's the game with the beanbags? Cornhole.
Cornhole.
Yeah, Cornhole and Jenga, life-size Jenga.
I think they had like a VR booth. They had a couple of people selling like custom arcade cabinets, and they had Extra Life there that was doing streaming. So they had a pretty good setup, I think, for, you know, I didn't see how many people were actually in like the board and video gaming area, but I almost felt like your vendors and your community tables would pull as much interest as your actual content, which is, you know, a good place to be for something like this.
Yeah, I think it definitely helped us. I mean, just I don't know, bring awareness of our group, what we're doing, who we are. But yeah, I totally forgot about the VR setup that they had. That was cool. I didn't get to try it out, but it was like a game that Joe Miller was telling me about, where you got these lightsaber type things and hitting objects. So yeah, sorry about cutting off your arm.
That's fine.
I didn't even realize that. I was just doing a quick thing. I posted it, and then I saw.
Do that.
Oh, go ahead.
I do that all the time when I do, if I do like a panorama, like something will get cut weird.
Yeah, I was just doing a quick picture of the booth and posted it on social media. Then I saw like 10 replies to it. I was like, what in the world's going on here?
Yeah.
Yeah, the handouts were good. The brochures were very popular among our other handouts. I like the brochures because it has all our information for regular attendees with all our information, so I can just hand somebody one thing. And
yeah, I do think it's, and I don't know that we've solved this problem, and I assume other groups have this problem where it's like, it's hard to figure out what you want to do with that sort of marketing. Like, are you advertising the group because it's a meetup group, and, you know, like you want people to come and kind of engage and, you know, do demos and things like that? Or are you trying to sell games? And if you're trying to sell, you know, like, how do the two cross over?
I think that was the biggest misconception. As people came by our booth, they're like, oh, are you selling stuff here? Or, well, the first thing is a lot of people said, wow, you guys actually make games. So I think that's one misconception, is like, oh, yeah, we actually do make games here in Knoxville, Tennessee. We don't like do it for a living or anything. So that's like one of the first things I always told people, is like, yeah, this is kind of a hobby for most of us.
And that's also hard to do, because you, like, there's been varying numbers of people in the group over the years, and it's like, how do you speak for everyone and not be like, because I'm always afraid of coming off as like, hey, buy stuff from me, like, you know.
Yeah, and I didn't want to make it like specifically about one member or anything. And even during the brochure, it's like, oh, who do we include in the brochure? I know we have a pretty good core group with myself, you, Dylan, Jacob, and Joe Miller. Other people have come and gone, so it's like, well, if other people start coming regularly, then I would be more willing to include them in the promotional materials. And
you're doing those like in such small quantities that it's not a huge issue. It's not like, you know, we've got a crate full of them back somewhere, and then, you know, if things change in a couple of years, that we're just gonna have to throw them all out.
Oh yeah, we gave away a lot of brochures. I think I had 50, and they were all gone. I think I might have given a few away before, just like at our kickoff for Ludum Dare and things like that. But yeah, the brochures, we gave away a lot of those, and yeah, I'm happy. I mean, bring awareness to the group, but yeah, like you're saying, is like, well, do we focus on being a group, a community group, or individual developers? I mean, I guess in this capacity it is as the Knoxville Gaming design group, but you still want to let people know that, hey, we do have individual projects that we do have on major platforms.
Yeah, I do think that's, like, we can do, depending on where they go next year with it, we could do a booth next year, but we could also do talks and stuff if they're set up for that. And I think that's probably more helpful for people who are curious, is let's talk about what game design actually looks like, because it's a big jump between, someone hands you a brochure because you're interested at a booth and actually getting into it.
Yeah, I know you brought that up with Bradley in the message, and it sounds like he was open to that in a future thing. I also want to mention that I got a message from Corey Johns. I'll just briefly mention this, but he was talking about the Tennessee I think it's like a Tennessee Arts Commission, and they were looking for input, so there may be some opportunity to maybe cross-promote with them, or I'm not exactly sure what program they're going to be starting up there. But yeah, this is a good picture. So we had the Raspberry Pi on a monitor, the Xbox One running Kitty's Adventure. Dylan, you had Nox Runner on a monitor and I like your Nox Runner because it's like the only multiplayer game that we had, so it was really popular. If you had a couple of people that came up and they just wanted to play a game.
And it was specifically built for demos. Like, you can play a game in 30 seconds. You can play up to 4 people. It's not too taxing. It doesn't take a lot to figure out. It's just go.
Yeah, and I think that's one thing we talked about at the convention, is having a convention mode for games, because I know some of my games I was just doing the standard build, and every time somebody finished playing I had to go over there and reset the game. So that's something you usually don't think about when you're doing a gaming booth, but it's good to have like an automatic reset after a certain period of time, so if somebody else comes in and starts playing the game, they're not stuck in the middle of somebody else's game. So Joe Miller, he had a laptop and also a tablet where he was showing off his Steam game, Kufi's Delivery Service. And Dylan, you also had your 3 tablets. I like the little photo display things, the little wired displays.
Oh, yeah. So, like, I went to Walmart Friday night, and if you go into, like, the picture frame section, you can find these little wire frames that you can, like, stick paper or something in. If you bend them just right, they're like $1. And if you bend them just right, you can actually set up a tablet so that, it's kind of visible what it is. Someone doesn't actually have to walk up and look down at your table.
Yeah, because if you've got a tablet just sitting on the table, like you're saying, it's just really hard to see there. So
yeah. And I think that's a huge part of it, is like, you don't want, because I know when I go to things like this, I don't want to walk up and be like, someone immediately being like, hey, let me show you this, let me show you that. Like, let me get comfortable with what's going on here, and then I'll check something out.
That was another issue that I think we had, was people didn't know if they were allowed to play the games. I don't know if making like a big sign that says, hey, please play our games, if that would have helped. I mean,
I don't know. Like, I think that's tough, because I don't know if it's like, I think a lot of it is we're showing games and not necessarily communicating what, like I said earlier, what we're doing. Hey, this is a meetup group. Yeah, we'd like for you to download or buy our games, but also, hey, just feel free to ask us questions.
Yeah, I think like putting the chairs out here in front too. It's like, okay, pull up a chair and play.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think we had a nice mix of people. There were some people, because we were close to the big main stage of CreepyCon. So after they had some event, some magician or whatever, zombie fashion show, we had a lot of people coming by. And you can tell the people that were coming by and they're like, oh, okay, that's interesting, but I really don't want to stop and play games. Then you had people that actually wanted to stop and play games. And then you had a few people that came by and were like interested in learning how to make games.
Yeah.
I know we had one guy, Zane, I forget his last name, but he was from the IGDA in Atlanta.
Yeah. He started asking questions, and I feel kind of bad because he was asking like, hey, you know, are you guys an LLC? Why not? And I started answering questions like he was, you know, just some guy who wasn't familiar with this. And then he's like, oh, yeah, by the way. I'm like, oh, sorry.
Yeah. I think he's tied in.
Professional.
Yeah, I think he's tied in with like SiegeCon, which is kind of like a mini GDC in Atlanta. He invited us to come down to that. I think he said that we were talking about it. I know they have talks, and they may have booths as well. So that might be something we could do in the future, but I just don't know if I want to spend 3 days in Atlanta. If it's just one day, I'd be more open to that.
That's a big convention. Like that's kind of a big commitment there.
Yeah, it seems like I've heard of SiegeCon before. I just never.
I definitely have. It's just never been the thing. Like there's been a group of people that's like, hey, let's go down and check this out. It would just be me going down if I did it.
Yeah, I think that's coming up pretty soon in October, and it seems like the ticket prices were like in the standard $100 to $150.
Yeah, again, it's a professional conference for the most part, and that doesn't necessarily line up with where we are.
Yeah, I'm wondering if they put their videos online, because I know like GDC puts all their stuff online eventually, and I know even the one in Lexington, Vector, they put all their stuff online. So, I mean, it is good to go out and meet people and talk with other people, but it is also convenient if they put their video online as well. So I made a sign, Knoxville Game Design, the glossy. I don't know if I would use the glossy paper again, because sometimes it makes it kind of hard to see.
Yeah.
They also make it where you can get a hard back to it as well. Our sign was kind of floppy. I think next time I would just like get a piece of cardboard and tape it to the back just to make it a little bit.
Like I said, you could get like foam core or something like that and just like paste it on there.
Yeah. Again, this was my first time doing a full convention booth, so like these are things you learn. And the other thing is like the background for the booth. It was kind of plain. I was like looking at other booths, and a lot of them kind of build upward. Ours was just kind of plain. So, and this is like a decision. It's like, well, how much money do you want to spend on a community group booth? I mean, I would like to have like a big sign back here that said Knoxville Game Design, and maybe some pictures of games, or even monitors, like a stand-up monitor. But yeah, all that costs extra money to make banners and stuff.
Yeah, and I don't know how much it's worth it to do that, because like if you're thinking about like big conventions that go around to other conventions and do this sort of thing, then they'll have that. But then, if you go to a convention and they just have like community tables for other conventions or clubs or organizations, it's usually something pretty much like this, just plain. Like the people you see building up in a lot of cases are the vendors who actually have like shelves of product or something.
They're doing this professionally. This is their job. Yeah. And
also they have stuff to display there. Like that's kind of intrinsic to what they're doing, not just like, for us it's the brochures and the demos.
Exactly. Yeah. Just things to think about for next time. Yeah, I didn't bring any string. I would have brought some string because I had like one sign that I didn't have any way to post it up or anything.
Yeah.
The one thing one idea that I had was like putting the names of the games on top of the monitors because I knew that was going to be like the first question everybody asked was like, "Oh, what's this game?" Especially if somebody's playing it. So just having and I haven't ever seen anybody else do that really. Aside from having, well, I think one difference between our booth and the booths at a lot of other gaming conventions is like other booths are just promoting one thing, one game.
Yes.
So they're going to have like one big sign for their game, but we're promoting like our group and like 5 or 6 other games.
I do think there's an aspect there of like it might be too much choice because it's like, okay, which one of these do I want to do? I think putting the name on there is good, partially because it's good to just have this TV is playing just this game. I know at previous demos, I've actually set up like a demo station where you can go through all of my games and just, pick whichever one you want to play. And so, like, the idea there is you've got this level of flexibility that if you want to play this little platformer, then you can do that. And if you want to play this puzzle game, you can do that. And there's something for everyone. But it's a lot easier to just, hey, here's a controller. Hey, here's a mouse. Here's this one game. Jump in. You don't have to make a decision.
Yeah. We talked a little bit about that as well. Even back at the McKay's Retro Night event, the fewer decisions people have to, even with the games themselves, if it's a complex game where it's like it's got to be something where people can pick up and maybe press one button and play it. I mean, if it requires multiple buttons and if somebody has to read instructions, forget about it, unless they're just really dedicated to sitting down and playing your game. But most people just want, and your tablets were great for this. Somebody could pick up shifty shapes and start instantaneously moving the shapes around, or even with Retro Future.
And that I had that experience at MomoCon with a couple booths where like there was a game that I would have really enjoyed if I could have sat down in kind of like the quiet of my own home and kind of started learning what was going on. But when you're in a room full of people and there's all these different kind of logical leaps you have to make to get to learn about it, it's just a lot more to pick up.
Especially when you're at a convention where there's all these other booths and people's attentions are divided. Now, with the Retro Game Night, we knew everybody at Retro Game Night was there to play games. And they knew they could pick up a controller and start playing. So it's just kind of knowing your audience, I suppose.
Yeah. Actually, there's another good thing I would point out with the knowing your audience bit was... and I guess this kind of figures into if you're doing a booth like this, where do you want to target it? But I think us as 30-something gamers think of like, okay, our target audience is the guy who grew up playing Nintendo, maybe plays some sort of more hardcore game now, or something like that. But it seems like when you have those people come up, they're like, oh, you do game design, like Fortnite or Overwatch or something like that. And you have to go, not exactly. But the people who really get into it are the ones who want to play, are happier with simpler games. Like you get a lot of kids coming up, people who wouldn't necessarily be interested in game design, but the type of game that a single person could make. A solo project by a hobbyist is the exact type of game that, a kid could get into.
Yeah, I think that's another good selling point for us is like maybe on a sign or something say, hey, made in Knoxville. Because I know we get support just because it's made in Knoxville. Because I know a lot of things I see, made in California or made in Georgia or wherever. So
yeah.
I think that's definitely a good selling point, especially when we do local events like this.
Yeah. But I think it kind of helps to know your audience and not be like, okay, hardcore gamers are going to love this. Hardcore gamers are not going to understand this because casual games are sometimes
yeah.
just like beyond them.
And I think with some of the younger kids that stopped by our booth, I don't think they really understood that, hey, we made these. I remember like one kid was like, oh, who's Levi Smith? And I'm like, hey, I'm Levi Smith. So,
Hey, that's good though. Like,
and then one kid is like, oh, what's this? Can you put Call of Duty on here? I was like, no.
yeah, and that's exactly what I'm talking about. Like,
Nothing against the kid. I mean, I understand. He just doesn't understand these were games made by us.
well, I know if I was at that age, like, I played Nintendo and I would not have understood the concept of like, no, like I'm on my Nintendo. I want to play Mario. Like, you have a Nintendo here. Why are we not playing Mario?
Exactly.
You have an Xbox here. Why are we not playing Call of Duty?
And we were pretty close to level up as well, and they had demos of professionally made games. So maybe some people just may not have made that distinction between our booth, which is locally Knoxville developed games, and then the other professionally developed games are over here.
But I think what I'm getting at, and I'm not trying to make that sound like people who don't get these games or just don't get it. It's like you kind of don't be fixated too much on like, here's the type of person who's going to want to sit down and play my games. So that's the type of game I'm going to bring and set up.
Yeah. I think it's just good that we had a wide variety of games. With like the kiddies game, you can just pick it up and you can play with the thumbstick. Then we had Nox Runner, where you can actually have multiple players and you have a couple of buttons, and Joe had his tablet and everything. I also wanted to give a big thanks to Jacob's mother, Kimberly, who kind of helped run our group or booth right here. I was just going to mention, I mean, I guess I didn't realize how long it was going to be because I went down there Thursday night, and they were very helpful, like putting carts and putting everything in our booth right there. I mean, they didn't set it up, but they hauled everything over there. But the first day it was like 4 till 11 or 10 p.m., something like that. And then the second day was 11 a.m. till 8 p.m. And then nothing against the organizers, but there really wasn't a defined exit strategy for us getting out of there. And there were some issues like, oh, can we pull up to the front and unload or whatever? I don't want to get into all that. But
I think there was. And I think the thing we have to remember is like, this was a vendor booth. Mm-hmm. So that's the type of thing that if you were going to a convention and you were a vendor, you would expect that I'm going to be able to pull my van up to the loading dock at this time, unload everything. I'll have, whatever resources I need. Whereas we're thinking very much like, a community table at a con of like, we've got a couple of volunteers here and there's no way we're going to have so much stuff that we need, like we're not selling anything. We don't have inventory, this should be easier. It's just like something lost in translation there.
Yeah. Cause I know like all the other events, like the Sunsphere with the Nox Devs or the Emery Place Block Party. We've done Maker Palooza. I don't know if you were at that one. But
no, I wasn't at that one.
Yeah. But those were like, we got to carry all our stuff in. And some of those monitors can be pretty heavy and everything. So, yeah, I appreciate everybody at the Knoxville Gaming Convention, CreepyCon, for helping us set up. I know Bradley was very helpful. I had, like, everything set up on the first day, then, like, all the power just went out. I was like, oh, crud, we're in trouble here. Yeah. So he was able to find, like, the power guy and get everything turned back on. It's like a loose cable and everything, and they were very helpful getting all that set up. I think that's all the pictures that I had. Jacob, are you still with us?
Yeah, I'm still here.
Do you have any thoughts on the gaming convention booth or anything with CreepyCon?
No, not really.
Okay. Well, we appreciate you coming out, and I think you showed off Lost Signal. That was a Ludum Dare game that you created a while back.
Yeah. Created that one a while ago.
Yeah, very cool. So I was just going to show one more thing that I forgot about earlier. One small thing that I've been working on. I got a lot of games, and I did a full, video on this, so you can go to my YouTube if you want to know more about this. But I got a lot of Unity projects that are all running on different versions of Unity. So I wrote this little Ruby program. I've been getting into GTK plus 3, which is like an open source GNOME. It's like the AWT in Java, like those components, windowing, and things like that. So I got it where you can press check, and it will actually read through a directory of Unity projects and pull out all the version numbers. So this gives me an idea. It's like, oh, here's all the projects that need to be updated. Like here's an old one that's running Unity 5. Just a way to keep these updated. I want to get it to where I can actually click on these. I just got it now where you can select projects. You can display the selected ones right here, but I want to get it where I can automatically compile all these. Maybe generate like the WebGL builds for all my projects with one click. So, yeah.
Is there a way to do that in Unity?
Yes, there is a way to
it's command line, isn't it?
Yeah, by command line. So I got these. I actually got build scripts right here. And let's see here. If you go, I don't have any currently out. Let me go back up. I got it where those can dynamically generate these batch files. So I'm gonna right click and go to Notepad. So I got this build all, which is generated. Yeah, you just call the Unity executable, and you can use -batch mode and put this log file. And then you specify a project path. Now, this is where your Unity game is located. Then you can either use -build Linux player or build OS X universal player or build Windows player. Then you specify the output directory. I think the batch mode flag actually is kind of like the silent mode.
Yeah.
If you don't have batch mode, then it will actually open the Unity window. But if you do batch mode, it'll just run silently. And then after, I just do an echo bell, just so whenever this is finished, it will ping and let me know. Yeah. Otherwise, I won't know when it's finished. So
it just hit me. I've probably asked this before, and my confusion probably goes back to, I remember at one point I was like, I use the compiler directives a lot in mine, like, and that was the thing that you can't do. You can't
through the command line.
Yeah.
Yeah, I really haven't worked with that much. I know I've been doing some of the Xbox stuff, the UWP, and I've always thought it's like, yeah, it'd be really nice if I could just set a flag that says, if it's for Xbox, then show the Xbox stuff, show the little icons for the Xbox buttons. If not, then just do the standard buttons. And there's ways to do that with like the global variables and things like that, but for it to actually detect if it's running on an Xbox and automatically set that variable, I haven't figured that out.
I want to say, because there's a you can do like # if and then like Unity _. Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, something like that, like an if-def Xbox or something.
Yeah, I think they've got some automatically defined. But you can also set them custom under like project. It's like build settings or something. Because I'll do that if I'm compiling when I've compiled for Amazon App Store and Google Play. I just use that and flip stuff out.
Yeah, stuff like that's really helpful when you're developing on multiple platforms. I just know when I was doing the Xbox stuff, you have to like import a project with all the Xbox stuff, and once you convert it to be an Xbox app, then it's hard to go back without like surgically removing all the Xbox stuff and then going back. So
I think I heard Jacob say something. Sorry, we've been talking over you.
Sorry. Well, I gotta go, so...
Oh, well, thanks for showing up, Jacob.
You're welcome. I'll probably be at the next thing, but I gotta go.
Yeah, that's
so
fine.
Bye, Joe.
Hey, Joe, how's it going?
Good. I forgot.
It's okay. I talked about your game a little bit, but I probably didn't do it justice. If you want to go over... put what where. I saw that you put a post on doublesquare.com, and it looks like you did really well in innovation, I think.
Yeah, like 79th. I think that's the best result I've gotten out of a Ludum Dare game so far.
Yeah, I don't think I've ever made the top 100 in anything, so that's definitely really good.
I'm surprised. I didn't know. Does it track the compost separate from the jam for those results, or is that all mixed together?
I think they're separate. I think the ratings for jam and compos are separate. So I think there's like a first, second, third place for jam, then the first, second, and third place for compo. Yeah, if you have that, if you have it and you want to share it out and tell us a little bit about it, that would be cool. Sounds like your mic's cutting out a little bit.
Let's see if that.
Okay, yeah, I hear you now.
Yeah, I don't have it up and running at the moment. I just got down on the computer.
Yeah, yeah. Sorry to put you on the spot. Yeah.
I mean, the game was kind of like loosely based on what I do in my day job, which is fulfillment for orders at like Amazon orders. It's not all I do at work, but it's one of the things we do.
I think I have video of it. If you can't bring it up, but
I think I can. Like,
yeah, there it goes.
Which is kind of the gist is that there's new boards that come in that you don't have control over, that are any number of random colors on them, and you can bring them over into this area where you can sort them out to try to match whatever you need to for up here. And then the things that are up here, the target or goal shapes and colors, they kind of randomly get replaced as soon as you're able to get one. And the longer it's there, the less points it's worth. So the faster you are at it, the more points you get.
Yeah, very cool. So it starts out kind of simple with just 3 colors of boxes: green, red, and blue.
Yeah, and then I think around the 4th or 5th board, it adds in yellow, and then after 8 or 10, somewhere in there, it also adds in pink or purple, whatever color that was, pink.
Yeah.
I'm actually colorblind, so this was interesting from my side to make sure that it was working.
I didn't know that. Yeah, I've been playing a game, I think it might have been a free game on the PlayStation 4 called Hue, and that is really based on colors, but they do have like the colorblind mode in there where they put different symbols and things on there.
Yeah, a lot of the time while I was developing this, I kept kind of like a debug mode on where I was having the color where like 1 is red and 2 is green and 3 is blue. Because they're all actually just blank squares. I didn't make separate sprites for everything. I just color them in real time.
One thing I noticed from Levi's video earlier, it looks like you're not randomizing this. Like this is a like there's a progression, right?
Sort of. I took control over the first couple to make sure that it would stay possible. But I think after about the 4th one, it is totally random.
Okay.
I was working on a way to make them be smart, so when it picked a new board up here at the top, it would pick its colors based on what it knew that you had. And I do have a couple global variables that are tracking, like the total number of green, blue, red, yellow that are on the board. But I didn't actually get that part functional for the jam version. But it was still drawing different colors than what it should have been. So I eventually dropped that and just made it random just to finish.
I also noticed as you play through the game, you'll eventually get more slots for the... I just call them pallets, I guess.
Yeah, that's kind of the idea. Was these were pallets, and then these were boxes on the pallets. I know one of the hardest things I was actually struggling with was just the basic drag and drop, which is stuff I've done a lot, but like being able to pick between when you're clicking on a box in the palette versus the whole palette. And then also like when you're dropping it, whether if you're overlapping multiple squares to like which one you're intending when you let go.
Yeah, I just noticed that like whenever you're hovering over the boxes with a box, then it
And
kind of lights up. But yeah, if it's hovering over multiple, yeah, I wouldn't know how you would choose that. I guess whichever one the mouse pointer is closest to.
I actually just went with whichever one it tagged first.
Oh, okay.
So I guess you could like highlight one and kind of bring it down, or well, I guess not. Maybe I just did whichever one it was more over.
Mm-hmm.
Percent wise, I tried a couple different things to get it working, so that it was keeping track of. Yeah, I think it's whichever one it's more over.
That's one
So,
of those things
closer.
that when you're playing a game you really don't think about, but one of those really hard problems when you're actually making the game.
Yeah, I went through two different versions when I was making it, where each spot for one was its own object, like top left, middle, or top middle, top right, bottom left, and that way I could check like what each one had. But I was trying to redo it so that I could just have palette spot, one object, and it wouldn't matter where it was at, it still behaved the same, and I could just create more of them and have a bunch of them anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
So I had to like redo a little bit for stuff like that where you're moused over two of them, so it wasn't becoming like a true statement that you're dropping in both, or stuff wouldn't get duplicated or freeze while it was trying to figure out what it wanted you or what you meant to do when you were moving them around. The two things that I want to do next with this are make it so that if you take a single box and put it somewhere else, that it would swap them.
Oh yeah, that would be nice.
Yeah, that would make it more like quicker to try to match the colors, and it would let you work on multiple boards at the same time if you were doing that.
Because I know a lot of times I was just trying to find, like, I would pick one palette and it's like, okay, this is the one that I want to make look like the other one. Then I'd start dragging the boxes out of that one and trying to find empty spots on the other boxes just so I can have like a fresh palette to work on.
Yeah, I was trying. I thought about trying to do something where there'd be like a receptacle up here where you could get empties if you wanted them, or put empties away if you didn't want them, so that you could choose kind of how much of your space you were dedicating to empties for sorting first. But I didn't end up doing that way.
Yeah, there's only so much you can do in 48 hours. I think it's a great game, and I think it fit the theme well. As I mentioned earlier, the theme was running out of space, so it seemed to fit that theme very well. Yeah, Joe, so we talked before you got on, we were talking about the Knoxville Gaming Convention, the booth. Did you have any thoughts?
It was good. I was kind of hoping, I guess there wasn't any other people on the meeting here this time, or
just Jacob. He got on,
okay,
and he had to drop off.
so we might have gotten some traction on the website or here, but
Yeah. Yeah, I posted the reminder on Facebook, on the website, and did the email. And yeah,
yeah, I need to set something on my phone that'll ring like an hour before.
Yeah, it seems like I tried doing the Google reminder one time. Maybe I didn't do that with the Google Calendar. I can try to remember to do that again next time.
No, I didn't realize it was 2:00. That's playing Dragon Quest, and yeah.
I'm playing Dragon Quest 11.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just started that one. I'm liking it. It's a little bit different. I mean, the core battle system is the same, but it's just weird. I can actually see my character during the battle now.
Yeah, it's a lot like 8, which I played on PS2. I mean, it's a pretty classic JRPG story and mechanics so far, which I kind of like because I mean the last couple games I've played that were franchises,
Final
they,
Fantasy
it's
15.
yeah, they try to do new stuff all the time, and sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. But sometimes I want to just sit back and do a battle system where I know I can take my time and make choices, and it's not all about button mashing and reflexes.
Yeah, it's got the classic leveling up system. Seems like a lot of the spells remind me of the classic spells in the game. Now they did add like, I'll forget what they call it, but where you can get new abilities like the big orb chart or whatever, like
Yeah.
in Final Fantasy. They kind of did their version of that, which I've never seen in a Dragon Quest game before.
It's pretty slow moving through the abilities, though. You don't get very many points. You kind of got to level 3 or 4 times before you get
Yeah,
thing.
I like the art style. Akira Toriyama, who did Dragon Ball. I think he's been doing the Dragon Quest games as well since the beginning of Dragon Quest.
I tried to play, I think it was Dragon Quest 9 on the DS, and I only ended up playing that one a couple hours. I didn't get into that one, so.
Because I remember the days back when Dragon Warrior here in the United States was like,
Yeah.
you probably know this, Dylan. It came like as a bonus for Nintendo Power subscription.
Yeah, I remember. I didn't get that, but I remember when they put in the little inserts because no one knew what an RPG was over here.
Oh yeah,
And they called it Dragon Warrior, not Dragon Quest, back in my day.
I'd still like to make a game like that at some point. It had like the apparently the new one still uses a lot of the same formulas for like how the strength plus weapon damage equals your attack power, and like how whatever it multiplies by 33 divided by 8, and that's like resistance, and like all the same math that they decided on 25 years ago, that this is how strength and fire and wind and resistance, and this is how it's going to work. It still uses those. They've layered on more to it. They've added different things, new elements and new whatever, but it's still got that same base math. And Dragon Quest, it's perfect. It's very fine tuned, where it's like whatever that level 1 people have this many health and do this much damage, and it really becomes quite tactical in the battle system.
It does seem like there were a lot of nods to previous Dragon Quest games, like the intro theme. It's got the classic theme, kind of like in 8. The sound effects when you level up. Even when the text boxes are populating, you hear the little dink, 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 dink.
Yeah. When you go in the new areas, the footsteps.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that's still the same sound effect.
It's like from the first Dragon Quest game.
Yeah.
But yeah, I played Dragon Quest 1 or Dragon Warrior for the NES. I played that quite a bit. I remember I did really poorly in the 4th grade just because I was spending so much time playing Dragon Warrior. Shows how old I am.
I think I actually had the first Dragon Warrior on my calculator.
Oh, wow.
In high school that I had downloaded, like a TI-83 Plus.
Yeah.
Yeah, like someone made a version of it.
Yeah, and it actually worked. Like it was like the whole game. Wow. It took up like all the space in the calculator, but you could play it, and nobody would know the wiser. That's.
I think 2, 3, and 4 came out here in the U.S. eventually, but they weren't popular. So if you're able to get a hold of 2, 3, or 4 on NES cartridges, they're actually worth quite a bit. 5 and 6, I don't know if they ever came out. I know 7 came out on the PS1.
A lot of them have been re-released now on something.
I think I had to.
2 was
I didn't play them back then, but I did play 3 and 4 on an emulator later, like in high school.
I think 2 was the first one with multiple party members and maybe multiple enemies as well.
Yeah, I think it was. I definitely know it was multiple party members.
4 was the 3 that had job classes, and that was like the first time job classes had been done.
I know Final Fantasy 3 had job classes.
4 was the one where it was like a really fragmented story where you jumped around who you were in control of, and then you ended up putting a party together at the end.
Yeah, I never played much of 4. I did play 8 quite a bit on PlayStation 2 and never finished yet. I don't remember what 9 was. It might have been a DS exclusive. I know 10.
I think it was.
And I think 10 was like an MMO or something that I don't even know if it got released in the United States.
I
So
think so.
I'm
Japan.
glad with the 11 they finally went back and just made a standard single player RPG.
I think most of them have been re-released on mobile now too.
Oh yeah, I had downloaded Dragon Warrior 1 or Dragon Quest 1 on mobile, but it's so weird to play with the touchscreen.
Yeah, I'm terrible with I can't play. I like have emulators and stuff on my phone too, but I need buttons. I don't like the nothing feel of tapping stuff.
Yeah.
Well, Joe, did you have any other thoughts on the booth, or I think we went off on a tangent there.
The booth was good. It was nice to see people coming out and asking about the group and seeing the group. A lot of people seemed surprised that there was anything in the area. There was quite a few people asking, like, for if there was their kid that was interested, or their boyfriend, or somebody else, girlfriend that was. Oh yeah, this would be good for them. But
Yeah.
We
Sorry.
were talking earlier about like just making a huge banner or something that said like "Made in Knoxville" or "Made in Tennessee." Because I mean, I think that's one good thing that we have going for us, especially when we're doing local events. Is like these games are made by us here in Knoxville, and I think a lot of people didn't realize that at first. They're like, "Okay, here's some other games that are here," and I think people didn't recognize like, oh, the level up stuff that was over off toward the back. Oh, these are professionally made games. These are games that are on major platforms, but made by people here in Tennessee.
yeah, locally sourced, organic,
Artisanal.
non-GMO, free range. Yeah, we'll add all those stickers.
Yeah.
East Tennessee.
But yeah, Dylan and I were talking earlier. I mean, we've been me, you, Joe, and Dylan and Jacob have been in this group for so long before we went to the online format. We're just kind of in the natural routine of doing this once a month on the second Sunday, getting other people to come in. I mean, I know we've had people come and go, but just to get in that regular routine of coming in and joining this can be difficult.
And also, just the leap, if you know nothing about game design, I'm not sure what sits in that gap to get you over, to get you to feel like it's going to be worth showing up or worth signing up or whatever.
Because it is like a time investment to get on here. But Dylan, I don't know if I mentioned this on the actual show, but you're planning on doing a talk on intro to game dev in November, probably?
Yes, assuming like something doesn't come up, I've got essentially like I've done this as a panel at cons where I just walk through building a Unity game in an hour. Nothing fancy, just like here's the low-level decisions you're going to make.
Yeah, I think that will be a good one for new developers or people just wanting to get to learn game development. So I'll definitely try to promote that as something. If people around here are interested in getting into game development, that would be a good one to attend. I'm not exactly sure what we'll be doing next month. I'm thinking maybe doing something on AI. If not, I may just do something on Pico 8 or Blender. So,
did you see the Unity Humble Bundle?
Yeah, I have not picked that up yet.
I was thinking about it. I was trying to watch a couple YouTube videos about making the jump from Game Maker to Unity from other people that have done it. Because a lot of the stuff just isn't there by default in Unity that we're used to in Game Maker.
Yeah.
Or how all the objects already have create events and step events and the draw events and stuff, like how I guess just how Yo-Yo sets up their dev environment and how to kind of make Unity do that for you. What I'm kind of confused about is how everybody talks about these scripting like resources, like Playmaker, or in this Unity Humble Bundle, they have Game Flow and they have something else.
I think there's a popular one called Bolt as
Bolt.
well.
But how do you like use those with Unity and like know what you're doing and what somebody else is doing? Like if I open a project that is a Game Flow as the editor versus Playmaker versus like what is Playmaker? What is
So Unity allows you to actually build custom editors.
okay?
Like editing like tools in like Windows and stuff like that.
And it actually changes what Unity looks like for the user, or
It doesn't change so much as like it adds new windows. Like for example, I built a little tool that I use to build across different platforms. That just creates like a window and says, okay, I want to create this build configuration. It has these definitions. Here are the folders I want to exclude.
Okay.
So it's just like this extra window that I can bring up. But those are stored in the project. So when you install an asset or something like that, it just kind of travels around with your project. So whoever opens that project should have access to it.
was there like you would only use one of these things? Like, so was it Game Flow? I'm gonna come look at the other one.
I don't know specifically how those work. Technically, you should be able to have them interact because it shouldn't be redefining anything in Unity. It should only be adding to.
And Flow Canvas was the other one. But are those the same kind of thing as Playmaker, or is Playmaker something different?
I don't know.
Yeah, it sounds very similar. I haven't used those other ones, but it all sounds like it's visual scripting where you can create. They're called FSMs, which is like finite state automata, where you can create different states, and on each state you add your logic. But all the logic is done by adding these actions, and the actions is like writing a line of code. Like you're adding to a value, you're allocating something, but then you can have like multiple states go to other states, and you call these events. So it's kind of like event-driven logic opposed to where you're just like straight declarative function programming.
Yeah.
Which I think it's good for like beginning. I was going to bring it up here. This may be kind of slow. But my problem with Playmaker is it seems to always get out of sync with the version of Unity. Then when Unity gets to like they released a new version of Unity and they deprecate like the networking thing, I got to go through and update Playmaker on all my projects, which isn't fun. So
Well, it's essentially like these things are essentially a wrapper around Unity's UI or API. So if Unity changes their API and they don't update, like build a new wrapper around this thing or update their existing, that existing block that you drag in.
Like updating add-ons in WoW after every patch. Everything breaks, and then over the next couple weeks they'll fix themselves one by one if the people are still maintaining it.
Yes. I think that's the real difference between them is, do you trust these companies to maintain,
So should I use something like that, or should I just go into Unity and can I just like create a box and then open up a window somewhere that's like the C# code for that box and like what it does when it gets created versus what I want it to do every frame of the game or every step cycle?
Yes. So basically I don't know if you have anything to add in here, Levi. I don't want to.
no.
Like, so my Game Maker, the way I use Game Maker, I don't use anything. Like my rooms are practically empty, and everything is done in code. I'll have a controller object that creates the things in the places that I want them to be created, and I have different objects that kind of exist that are like game flow control objects that are checking on things that exist in the global variables and executing things based on whatever parameters I set.
You can do that in Unity as well. Like, in fact, that's what I've done in a lot of cases. the way Unity works is, so you've got this concept called a game object. And a game object is just like anything in the game. Like you can see what like Levi's got up. He's clicked on the menu game object. And that menu game object has a transform that tells you where it is in the world.
Well, what's the menu? Is that like meaning like the title screen, or is that meaning like a UI element that's going to be on the thing, or
that's just an object in the game? So that's
what is this
like
little thing where he's at now? Is that Playmaker?
Yeah, this is Playmaker right here. This little window. So you also get a menu up here. I was also going to mention earlier is like, well, the Hutong Games develops Playmaker, and they are good at keeping their stuff up to date. I mean, they've been out for like the last 5 years at least. The problem is they always lag behind the current version of Unity. So if the latest version of Unity breaks Playmaker, it may be like 3 or 4 months until they get their stuff up
It seems
to date.
like Playmaker is pretty widely adopted too.
Yeah.
Like I've seen a couple YouTube videos where I was trying to kind of understand, and that's like one of the first things they say is like, oh, just open up Playmaker and do this. And I was clicking around my Unity like, what are they talking about? Like,
I think
didn't really explain that Playmaker is not default Unity. I guess enough people use it that they just assume.
Yeah, Playmaker. I think it's usually on sale anywhere from like $60 to $80. But yeah, so you got like a game object like my player right here. It's kind of like the game. I forget what's in Game Maker. But if you're doing scripting, then you have
there's a lot of properties here.
Yeah,
you don't have to set all these.
No, a lot of these you get by default.
Yeah. Oh, you're talking about those there. I was thinking like in the inspector.
What's the inspector? Yeah.
The inspector, like basically, so each of those little sections with the triangle by them is a different component. So for example, the capsule mesh filter and the mesh renderer, those are used to draw something. The capsule collider is used to detect collisions. But
it does it like with a plain geometric shape rather than the actual.
Yeah, so that capsule collider just creates this little like pill-shaped object over, and then like the Playmaker FSMs are the state machines that are going to run on this object.
These are specific to Playmaker, so you really don't even need to worry about these, really. These just populate these FSMs over here, which is kind of like the different states that an object goes through. Like, I have one for the player called the health FSM, so by default, like the player's idle, but whenever he's damaged, then it's going to go to this damage action, then it's going to subtract 15 using this action here from the player's health. Then after the player's damage, we're going to have like an automatic transition called finished to go to check dead. Then it's going to check and see if the player's health is less than or equal to 0. So if he's dead, then it's going to call like do dead, which
you have to do that with these little menus like this, or can it just be a code block?
See, this is like a design decision type thing. This is good for like learning like Unity and how to program and stuff, but sometimes it's easier just to write I health minus 15. So
and then right below it have a if I health is less than or equal to 0.
Exactly.
And then some curly brackets and your what happens if it's dead. But
so if you want to do that,
like where was that? So you had that I health that's your integer variable for that. Wow, where did that come from? How does that get?
That's defined under variables right here. And you can, I can't see it here because I got this other thing, hides. No. So you can create a new variable, whatever you want to call it right here.
Yeah.
And then you can pick the type like an int or
Boolean. Okay.
String, Boolean. Then you could just click add right there. Then that'll add it. But this is only local for this FSM. Now you can make this global. There's a different spot for global, which I can't see right here.
Now that's local to the point that it's only usable specifically in the health FSM or in the player object.
I think it's specific for the health FSM.
So you wouldn't be able to reference it from like their.
There are ways in code to do it, but not easily.
Yeah, and that's actually one of the things I really like about code is you get a lot of the abilities of C Sharp. So, for example, each one of those components in the inspector
Yeah.
is a C Sharp class. And the C Sharp class is going to define what variables it tracks in that component.
Mhm.
It can define those variables as public or private, meaning public variables you can come out from another object and get to them. You can define statics, which means there's only one copy of that variable across the entire game,
Okay.
which is good for, if you like have a single object. And then it defines methods, and methods are just actions that particular component can take. And so that's going to be where you say, like, I have the awake and start actions, which fire when this object is created. I have the update action or a method that fires every frame that's drawn. And then you can also get other components and use their public properties and methods to kind of interact.
Yeah, I think one of the things I'm getting into that's pretty complicated with GameMaker is like when I have an object collide with another object, or even I say collide, but sometimes I'm using it as like the mouse and you're clicking on something that I want it to go and look into that other object and check things within it or bring back up a layer, like specific variables that are there.
So basically have two objects, like, okay, I know that this object touched this other object and I want to pass data between them.
Yeah, I guess one of the things I do a lot is with drag and drop, but I mean I'm 2D, so I'm assuming I'm going to set up Unity 2D.
Yeah.
Where I'm if I've clicked an object, I check that object if it is draggable and you're not already dragging something, or there's any, like, if you're open to being dragged and it's true, then that it takes that object and puts it into a state where it's being dragged, so it updates its X and Y on the screen with the mouse as you move it around, so you're dragging it around. And then when you let go, or if you click it, to put it somewhere, that it's able to check from the mouse to the thing you're holding to the spot you're trying to put it and see if that's a true possible place to put it. Like whether there's no other collisions, or if there's something like with Khufu's, I had the boxes where it was checking like how full it was, if that was a points thing, like that's not setting top on something else that's already there, that its shape matches the open space that you're putting it in. And then like if it's false, then it kicks the object back to where you picked it up from. Or if it's true, then it lets it go there and the object becomes there in that spot.
Yeah.
Like if you wanted to do that in Unity, you'd want to do that in an actual script and not Playmaker, because that's where Playmaker starts. Like in Playmaker, if you want to start doing arrays or start doing these complex calculations, it just gets unmanageable because you keep having to like add all these actions. So I was just going to show, like, if you have your player object, which is like me moving around here, what you would want to do without Playmaker, if you're not using Playmaker the standard Unity way, you would create like a player script right here, and then you can drag this player script on player right here. Then when you double click on it right here, then it will bring up Visual Studio, and then you can like add properties to the player. So I'd do like,
okay,
if I wanted to be if I wanted to have a public health, I'd do public int I health. And if you save this and come back to your editor, and this is where it gets kind of weird, but it should allow you to actually change that health value in the inspector right here.
Oh, that's neat. Okay.
Once it recompiles.
Yeah. So you kind of got to click off and you click on, then it'll recompile. After you've used Unity long enough, you start to realize when it's doing stuff and when it's finished. It doesn't give you an hourglass, but like right here, health, I can set it to 50. A lot of times I don't like using that method. Usually I'll just do like on start, I'll do I health. .50. But this is where you can start getting into conflicts. Like if you put health as 42 right here, well, when you start this, what is your health value? Is it using the inspector value? Is it using the value that's assigned here? Or is it using the value that's assigned here? So it can get a little bit confusing like that. But in Game Maker, where you have step, basically you have update here. So you can do, like, if I want to give somebody like 2 health every second, you can do I health, add and assign 2. And then to get it to go to seconds, you multiply it by times delta time. You'll see time.delta time an awful lot.
Delta time built into Unity?
Yes.
Okay.
This is the amount of time from the previous update to the next update. And after you've done this long enough, you'll actually get accustomed to when to use this as kind of a standard thing. It's going to complain because this isn't an int. And I wouldn't actually do it this way. I'd probably have health as a float or something. I don't know. But, yeah, so the only downside to using this method is if you have a lot of different states, like in this health FSM here, you're going to have to keep track of your own state. So typically you do that maybe with like a private bool is dead. Because sometimes when the player's dead, you just want them to lay on the ground for a second. You don't want the player to be able to move. So you'll do like a...
Could you wrap like the whole update thing in a if they're not dead, if the boolean's false?
Yeah, so you do it is dead is true is health. But yeah, so typically I have like one big one around here is like if not is dead.
Right.
Then put everything around this. But a lot of times I'll do like a function called public void handle input. And then I'll put all my user controls in here. Then inside is if is not is dead, then just handle input. That way you're not putting all your input code into here. But the one nice thing about Playmaker is, like, if you go to this FSM, you got controls. It's got like get access vector, horizontal, vertical. Then this isn't the best way to do this. I've been learning more about character colliders, but this is also valid. You just do translate, and you select every frame. It's important to click that every frame. And that's all you need to do to make something move. Now, if you're doing this in script, then you're going to have to do like a vector 3, vet gets new vector 3 dot input dot get access horizontal, and these are actually defined in the properties. Project property.
Checking the controller input that you have.
Yeah, so then you
assigning
then you do get access
of the okay.
Yeah, so I'm making a vector 3, which is like a 3D point in space, and I'm getting the value of the control pad or the button press in the horizontal and vertical, and assign that to vector. Then I can do a transform dot translate. The one nice thing about this is it does have auto completion, which does help. Transform translate on vector 3 or just vect, and then I think we still want to do
time delta time.
Time delta time, just to make sure. Otherwise, because you're not guaranteed that the time between frames is always consistent. Now, I think there is a fixed update, which I don't use, but apparently that's what you're supposed to use when doing physics and things. Dylan, you may know more about that.
Fixed update is, I think, whenever physics processes, and I've used that. So for example, what I've done in a lot of cases when I'm doing movement is I'll put the rigid body object in, which is supposed to, like, you can add force to that and do all kinds of like fancy physics stuff. What I'll usually do is I'll process the inputs in update, and then when fixed update rolls around, I'll just set the velocity of the rigid body. Say like, okay, this is moving this much in the X direction, this much in the Y direction at this moment, and it handles the rest of it.
Yeah, so, I mean, I don't know. I like Playmaker. I think it's good for beginning. But if you're doing stuff really complex, sometimes it's better just to do it in script.
But all of the player's code will be in this one C# script?
You can actually do multiple. you can actually do multiple scripts on an object. So,
Like I could have player underscore create, player underscore update.
So typically I would have like maybe a monster script or an enemy script, and that would hold properties of the enemy like their health and their attack points or attack value and things like that. But then I may want to have like a script specifically for a certain monster to control their behaviors.
Yes, you could have like a parent-child system, or no? Or would you just drag the same script over? How does the player? Where did player come from in the game window there?
Oh, it's just an empty game object. So you can do create empty, and you just call it player.
And then you drag the C# script over to it.
Yeah. What I'll do in a lot of cases, if I'm working on a really, more complicated game that has, like, that reuses a lot of code, is I'll do what you're saying, like, I'll have a player movement script, I'll have a player damage script. They might talk to each other, but
they're separate files, so that you can jump
you can even do things like you can have your base enemy script and then add in different behaviors on top of that. Like for the little Metroidvania I was working on, I did it's like enemy base, walking enemy base, and then on top of like jumping enemy base or something, and just kind of add more functionality as you go up the chain.
One other thing that you'll probably run into is like if I have an enemy, like if I attack an enemy and that enemy value gets passed to me, you can always do like on the game. So the game object is kind of like the base class that all this inherits for, even though it's inheriting from mono behavior. I'm assuming mono behavior. I'm not sure if that's an interface or inherits directly from game object, but you can do a get component.
Yeah,
and you'll probably.
Oh,
go ahead.
What's a component?
Sorry. Game object is actually the container, and that's separate. Like mono behavior is for the component itself.
Oh, okay.
There's like slight differences between the two.
Yeah, that stuff I always get confused with. But any of these things here in the inspector, these are the components over here, and all these little, like the plane, the mesh collider, and all that. So you can actually do a get component and say, I want to get the player object on that game object. Then you can do like player P gets that. So that's like a quick and dirty way. Some people say, oh, you need to define an instance variable up here called like player P, then assign that like in your start and only have one, or assign it in the inspector. But if you're not doing this like on every frame, I think doing get component or get game object is okay.
There's also like 100 ways to do every specific thing, and so whatever way we tell you to do it is probably wrong.
Yeah.
I mean it helps. That's
wrong.
I'm trying to. I'm not 100% sure if I want to jump over or not. Like, the main thing is now that I've got GameMaker Studio 2, but I don't have the export for WebGL or for Android or for iOS, and I would have to spend $400 or $500 over there to be able to put my stuff back out.
I think if you ever anticipate doing 3D, it'd be worth going over to Unity.
I don't know that I would like real 3D, but I think it might be easier for what I was trying to do with that little isometric 2.5D thing, because that's pretty hard to do in GameMaker, and I feel like in Unity it would be easier, that it would be 3D but not like really behaving like 3D, because you still fix the camera or what panning around the view, but it's a lot easier even if you use something like voxels or something to do a decent fake 3D with it.
Yeah, Dylan probably knows more
3D, but not the player doesn't move around in 3D space.
Dylan can tell you a lot more about doing 2D in Unity than I can. I know there is a specific, when you create a new Unity project, you'll say, do you want to do a 2D project or a 3D project? And I think the physics for the 2D projects are different. It uses box 2D, whereas the 3D uses NVIDIA or whatever the default physics is for 3D.
You can, like, when you select that project, it doesn't really do anything other than give you default settings on the view and on the camera. You can mix and, well, you can put both the regular, like, rigid body collider objects and the 2D rigid body and collider objects, but they don't interact. So it's pretty similar, but you kind of just have to pick one and go with it for a project.
Yeah, I'd see myself mostly using 2D.
Yeah, so I mean, I can't really advocate using Playmaker or not using Playmaker. The one good thing about Playmaker is when you get objects with multiple states, it's like, oh, the player is alive and he does have poison and he is jumping, but he hasn't hit the ground yet. Well, you got to start doing all this bull stuff in a script, like bull is landed. You'll do stuff like this if you're jumping, like private bull is in air. And then you got to keep all these bulls straight. And so that's one nice thing about the FSMs in Playmaker.
C# does have a concept called enumerations, where you can basically say, here are my 5 states, and then I have a variable that can only be those 5 values or something. And there's actually, I think, a way to turn them into flags where multiple ones of them can be true, but I always forget how to do that. So
yeah. I know the Playmaker stuff can turn like into spaghetti once you get so many of these states. I think if you do, like Dylan, like you're saying, if you do use enums or whatever, which I don't use a lot of enums, that's probably better than this bull methods that I have. But it's probably always good to like draw it out on paper. It's like, oh, here's all my states and what it's going through, or not paper. I'm old school, but have it documented.
I think that's actually a good idea, because whatever you end up using, you have to understand the state machine you're building, because the advantage of Playmaker is you can actually see what's going on. You don't have to read the code and then like interpret it.
What about scripts? Like if I wanted to create a script that's that any object might call in their code to do something.
Like, what's an example?
Oh, that's the game I'm working on right now. I created a script to check movement. So it's a grid-based 2D game, and any hero or enemy can run the script to check move, and they pass to it their X and Y and their move range, and then the script runs, and it like starts with the tile 1 left of the X and Y that you passed through to the script, and it's like, is this move okay or not? And what about 2 left? What about 3 left? What about 4 left? What about 1 up? 2 up, 3 up? But it like in the inside of the object, the hero or the enemy object, all they do is script execute, check move. And like it goes to another, like in Game Maker, there's in the UI, there's scripts that are separate from your objects, and it runs. And like you set up with the script, you tell it at the beginning like which arguments it should be receiving from your code, and then you run all the stuff you want it to do in that script, and then return back the result.
Yeah, you can definitely do that. Like, there's a concept, like one of the nice ways to organize it, there's a concept in C# called a static class. And static class is just like a single object that sits out there. There's never multiple instances of it. And you can put, static methods on that class. So you can basically create your own like helper method library.
Is that what a method is? What those would be like?
Yeah.
Would it be like its own .cs file that exists out in the project folder somewhere?
It depends on how you want to structure it. Like, there's not an easy way to create a new C# script that isn't a mono behavior, but it would basically be that.
Can you work on your Unity project without Unity? Like, if you had your Do you use? You said you use Visual Studio.
Yeah, you can use
Have you ever
any.
used Eclipse?
I think I integrated VI one time, VIM with Unity. But yeah, you can set any editor you want.
And then
To,
just open up your C# files and kind
Yeah.
of work on them without
yeah,
the editor?
yeah, you can edit. I wouldn't advise it,
Well,
but
because you can't compile it to make sure it's working.
because I'm usually going back. I'll make a change in my script, then run it, make a change, run it. But yeah, it is possible because all the game files are in the assets folder. Like here's Ancient Adventure, and here's scripts. So they're all just CS. It does create these meta files. You don't have to worry about those. But yeah, I can go to this enemy right here, open in Notepad++, and there's all the behaviors. Yeah, I have a health, drop type.
Yeah.
For this enemy right here. I was going to mention like every object in Unity has some base properties. It has a position. I know you were talking about positions earlier. It has a base X, Y, and Z, at least for 3D. It has a rotation and scale, so you get all those.
X, Y, Z, and W.
For rotation, yeah, it's just got. Yeah, it's just got X axis, Y axis, and Z axis. But there are things like Euler angles, which I don't know all about. But you can like calculate your own rotations from that. I think it's a quaternion class.
Yeah, and it has a way, like it's one of those things I've heard of, and I have no clue what it actually does. But it does have a way you can create it from the X, Y, Z, and W, like you're talking about. But it also, like you said, Euler angles and whatever else.
Yeah, I always just like create a new game object, set rotation to quaternion identity, which is like the default rotation for an object, rotation matrix, and then I just rotate it if I want it to be 180 backwards, and I just rotate on the y-axis by 180. It uses degrees.
I don't know. Like I'm not sure that I've hit anything with what I'm working on right now that I can't do in Game Maker. I'm pretty sure Game Maker can do just about everything, but I'm wondering whether it's going to be worth the effort that Game Maker would need versus switching to something where Unity, where it's some of this stuff is built in, like that's already there in a menu. It's just a checkbox. I don't have to code my own stuff like delta time. Like Game Maker doesn't do delta time by default. You have to make it.
Yeah, because Game Maker just basically has step, and you just assume that it's called 30 times every second.
Yeah, but you can pick up on whether it is or not. You can run some step checks.
Oh, yeah.
You can float the difference in the step checks and then add that, like store it in a global delta time variable, and anywhere that you would normally say divided by 60 or whatever, you'd say divided by 60 times delta time.
Oh, okay.
Like same sort of thing there but if you're not already doing it in Game Maker, you go back to try to add it to a project. You have to go anywhere you've ever said anything to be based on a number of frames and update it to include the delta time differential.
Yeah.
Or you just don't care. It's most Game Maker projects aren't really struggling.
I remember really old like games on the 386. They wouldn't like check the CPU cycle. So if you took a game on a 386 and you ran it on 486, it'd like run twice as fast.
Yeah, there's still some like that with DOSBox. If you load up some of the old CD-ROM games and stuff, like if you don't set some kind of CPU limiter on there, you can't even play it. Like
it's like going light speed.
Yeah.
Remember on the intro to Wing Commander, it is the original Wing Commander for the PC. It was the same way. It's like if you had a super powered up machine, you wouldn't even be able to see the intro or something. It just go so fast. But the only other considerations with Unity is like if you are anticipating on making a hit game, it's like, well, if you make over $100,000 on your game, or altogether or something. I don't know all the legalese, but you do have to give a percentage back to Unity. And if you don't have the pro version of Unity, then they're going to display the Unity copyright screen if that's an issue for you.
Not really. I think most people
they expect
have,
and they have
learned to ignore it.
they have modified it where you can put in your own logo and put in your own background, so it doesn't
after
look quite
Unity,
as
or?
bad. Yeah.
Because like mine, I think I put like Levi D. Smith Games with the green background, and so you can make it look pretty, and you can kind of tailor it for your.
I think
company
people
or
just ignore those splash screens anyway. Even the big games still have like the Bink Video one or some other random, the Cryware or the whatever. You don't care. It's a game.
Yeah.
As long as the game works, I don't really care
Like
how
these
it was
AAA
made.
games, I see like 4 or 5 of these, like different tools or technologies flash up.
Yeah.
You just
I
kinda
think if
use-
somebody like really wouldn't play my game because it was Unity personal over Pro, then oh well.
yeah.
I actually think that was a big point of contention when they changed some of the licensing, because people did not want, people wanted better access to, to change that
Customizing.
screen.
Yeah.
Because there is a lot of shovelware out there in Unity, and so it kind of has that reputation. Kind of like anything else, RPG Maker or whatever.
Yeah, you get that RPG Maker title screen. You know it. As soon as it opens up, you're like, "Yep, this is RPG Maker."
It's like da 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 da.
New game, continue. Yeah, it's the same little 3 white square window. But I've actually played some really good RPG Maker games, so I won't go out of my way to go download a whole bunch of them and try them. But if something floats up through, I see it on Twitter or people are recommending it, and I see that it's got 20, 30, 40, or hundreds of good reviews for whatever reason, but some of them are actually really good.
Yeah, I mean, I think what it is it's the accessibility of the engine and the ease of making like a mostly polished game with it. Because asset packs and stuff, and I mean that's. Sorry,
I don't know if I got like a random game and it opened up to the default RPG Maker, like that hero with the blonde hair and the I'd be like, okay. Look, but if other people, I'd just read about it first. Mostly, I played one that was for a contest a while back, last year or so. It was only like 45 minutes long to play, but it was like a really cool story. Like it was almost a visual novel-esque thing. It just, the RPG Maker is what they decided to use to tell the story.
Yeah,
just kind of had to ignore, like, it didn't have battles. It didn't really use much out of there. I don't know why they chose to use RPG Maker, but it worked. That was.
The thing is, Unity is kind of the same way. Like, you can do good stuff with it, or you can use it to flip, assets onto the Steam store.
You can do that with Game Maker too. I mean,
Yeah.
Not all my assets are my own. I mean, I'm not an artist. I've done things.
When people talk about asset flips, they don't mean like someone who takes the assets and then adds value to them. They literally mean just like
buying a pre-built game.
Standard first-person shooter.
Yeah.
Here's some pre-existing zombies.
Yeah.
And guns and.
We see that a little bit too, because people like Vlambeer, they've released their stuff to open source. Like, not the current retail build, but they like put out the Nuclear Throne, whatever, like 1.3 when they're on 1.5. Let's say 2 versions ago, and they'll put it out. They just like released it open source. And like, here's how we made this in Game Maker. Here's the Game Maker project file. If you're curious, then go take a look. And then like the next day, you start to see all these like, here's Nuclear Not Throne with purple enemies, but it's my own game, I promise. Like you copy and pasted their source code and changed one thing and then try to re-release it or whatever. That was happening a lot with Greenlight.
Yeah, I've seen
some
some
of
of
like
those.
the Super Meat Boy. I think their source code is out there. A lot of the guys that they're either nice, like Zach Bell, I think who his name is, Ink. The guy who made Ink. That one's been released a couple times on things like in Humble Bundles or whatever.
I know Jim Sterling like made a living off making fun of bad green light asset
Yeah.
flips.
Yeah.
But Dylan, didn't you make a RPG Maker game? I think you did a jam with somebody for Ludum Dare. Is like the
Yeah.
one room RPG. It was pretty well done.
Well, and that
Oh, that was like a puzzle. You had to like figure out which.
yeah, and I think that's really the trick with stuff like that is, people see the title screen or people see the standard graphics, and it could be bad, or you could actually go in there and monkey with the mechanics enough to like really create something different, and that's what we were trying to do.
Yeah, because that game that you made, I mean, I wouldn't have known it was an RPG Maker game if I didn't know that you made it with RPG Maker.
Really, like that wasn't it. It definitely did look like an RPG Maker game. It was just it, I think, allowed you to die and then come back, and stuff that you don't expect those games to do.
I think it was the one room game. So
Yeah.
yeah. I think you did a jam. So it's like, well, I could tell that you were using pre-existing assets. Yeah, I was like, I don't think you all made those sprites over
No.
the weekend.
No, that would have been.
Very cool. Well, I guess that's it. And Joe, did you have anything else you wanted to show off, or?
Not yet. I mean, I've done two pretty big things with this grid game that were both really hard to code in my head, but they're not very visually impressive. Like, one was the turn order.
Oh, okay.
I like create this battle actor array
Mhm.
that takes in all the heroes and the enemies that are in the room or like when the battle starts, and they all have a speed stat,
Mhm.
and it puts together the turn order for like the entire battle.
Oh, that's interesting. That's kind of like Final Fantasy X, where you got the list of everybody and
Yeah.
the turns in order.
So,
and
but I didn't make any kind of visual element to it, so I know it's working because I can look at the array values and see that, like, if I tinker with somebody's speed to 10 or 12 or whatever, that it reshuffles everyone's turn order. And I've made it so people can be knocked back, or they can be stunned, skip a turn. They can have stuff happen to them where they get faster or slower, haste or slow, and it all works. But there's just nothing to see. I mean, it's just like it's somebody's turn.
Yeah,
But
because
it's pretty complicated on the back end.
I remember one of the first things I learned in computer science is like first in, first out, which is pretty simple. You just put the first one in, and it goes out. But when you actually have things that go at different speeds, and that kind of throws that out the window.
Everybody has a speed stat, and then everybody has a stat that I just called CC. I don't really know why, a common charge or something, but basically they take their speed stat and you add it every frame up to 100, and like whoever gets to 100 first, it's their turn.
Oh, okay.
And then they go back to 0, but the rest of the people stay where they're at. So if somebody's at 76, somebody else is at 85, somebody else is 90. Then they'll continue counting to 100 after that person goes. And then, like, if two people both hit 100 at the same time, it takes who's ever higher on the thing. I don't think I actually made a step to cover if there's an actual tie. If there's two people that both go up to like 112 at the same time, and they're both a speed of 14 or something.
I guess you just have to pick one then.
Yeah.
Because I remember, like, in the original Dragon Quest and original Final Fantasy, it's like, okay, your party went first, your first guy went first, then your second, third, and fourth, then the first enemy, then the second enemy. And then I think with Final Fantasy 4 or 6, they introduced the active time battle system, which is kind of like what you're implementing here.
Yeah,
where each character has, like, a gauge, and whoever's gauge fills up first gets to go.
I want to add that visual element for the gauge, but it's going to be just on their hero screen, I guess. I'm not sure, but that's what I was going for, is what Final Fantasy Tactics uses.
Oh, yeah, I remember Final Fantasy Tactics. So
And
basically, you have a list of all the characters, but you're not keeping a list of the turns or anything. Each character keeps track of his like progression in the meter for the active time battle system.
Yes.
Okay.
And then you can, like, if you have something that, I don't know, if I'll have an attack that's like a tar, whatever, like it could knock 20 or CC, but it'll still keep track of where they're at in relation to everybody else. Or if you slow them down, instead of adding 12 each turn, it would only add 8 or something. Or if somebody gets knocked unconscious, or if they're frozen or sleep or something like that, it could stop counting their turn or adding up to their turn while they're in that status effect.
I always remember like haste and slow spells, and I never did use them. Like the red
Yeah.
mage has all the time spells. Like, okay, I just want to hit somebody.
The other thing was the moving. The moving. I wrote this crazy long, like 1,200 lines of code script for how to check where they can move. So like how that one, like each hero or the enemy, they have a move stat, and it's something like in the range of 40 to 60. And then they have what I call a terrain handicap. So there's grass, there's road, there's rocky, there's beach, desert, whatever they have. Like so, any particular unit, they might have a grass handicap of 15 and a road handicap of 10.
Oh, that's
so if they have a move of 50, they could go like 3 steps into the grass or like 5 steps on the road.
I've never
Or
seen
some
that done before.
Combination of that.
Yeah.
And what it's doing is the script is it's taking their move available, and then it goes like one tile out in each direction, checking what kind of tile it is, subtracting their move available, and determining whether it's flagging the tile as yes, they can move here, or no, they can't move here.
Because so obviously you think like water creatures would be able to move faster in the water, move
Yeah.
more spaces than water. Desert creatures can move further in the desert, and woodland creatures can move faster in the woods or something.
Exactly.
Like
And that's another thing that could be affected with a stat of some sort. Like you could equip certain boots or something that give you forest walking, and somebody that previously was not good at moving through the forest would be able to move through the trees better. But then also it had to take into account like if there's enemies, you can't move onto the same square that an enemy is.
Oh yeah.
If there's other immovable objects like a ground unit with like a wall or something, or a sign or a barrel or whatever, an environmental object, they can't move on top of that, but they can move around it. That was what threw me off. So I started doing a script where it would like it checked to the left, and then it would check like up and down from that tile to the left, and then left and right from the tile that it checked up and down from, and then up and down from the tile that it checked left and right from. And then I ended up scrapping that whole system and doing a thing where each tile checks all 4 tiles around it.
Oh, okay.
Now what happens with that is there's a lot of wasted processing, because when it checks one tile to the left, the first thing it's going to do is check one tile back to the right.
Oh,
But
this
it's
is like
already-
a painting algorithm, kind of.
It's already checked that tile to the right when it was checking the first time. So each tile, and then like it's kind of there's a problem if I give somebody like a move of 600, where they'd be able to like move anywhere on the whole board, it does lock it up right now. There's like severe slowdown.
Yeah.
Because it's almost like a factorial problem there, where every square going from 600 or like 40 to 60 is not a big deal, but going from 600 to 610 is a huge deal, because it means one more tile checked off of every other tile in every direction all the way around. It's like
It's reminding me of like computer theory and Big O and compute time and the n log n algorithms and the O square or the theta log squared algorithms and all that. It's like once you add another loop in, it adds like an extra level of complexity.
yeah, and that's the thing is I actually ended up making this thing recursive, so that each tile, if the first tile that it checks is true that it can do that tile, then it runs its own script inside of the script to check that tile and the 4 tiles around it, and it will continually do that until it hits the wall or hits an enemy or hits something that it can't move. Once you run out of move available, yeah.
I did kind of deal with that problem when I was doing the match 3. By like I think it passed around a 2x2 array of the game objects that I was actually working with. I
Yeah.
also created a separate I think I created a separate 2x2 array that basically flagged, have I checked this tile yet? And so when it goes through the recursion, if it sees that it's already checked that tile, it just stops.
Yeah, I started doing that and it broke it because what I realized is I didn't want it to check if it had checked that tile yet. It needed to know, has this tile checked the tile around it yet? Because like left 2 up 2 is going to be different than left 1 up 2 left 1. The pathing matters. If there's an enemy or a rock or something to go around, how it got to that tile could potentially be different. Whether something like whether their move, like if they're going along the road for 3 squares and then up 1 versus just trying to go over 2 through the desert or something like that.
Like a pathfinding algorithm.
Couldn't you, like, do they actually have to pick that path? Or pick between multiple paths?
Not yet. That's so I was still just kind of tinkering with it where like I've been messing with it where I give the hero a move of 50 and I put a couple enemies around them and have them somewhere on the road and I'm just double checking that it's working. And right now it isn't working. And if for some reason it's not working downward, but it is working left, right, and up. And I'm not sure what I did wrong.
It seems like what you could do, I don't know how you would do the second step of it, is just the first step is like display the tiles that can actually be touched, and then when the player actually selects a tile, that's
then
when
calculate
you work
the
out.
path.
Yeah.
Which path it was. I'm leaning toward just having them teleport to the have the check happen that figures out what all's possible, and then you'll highlight the tile you want them to move to, and then they'll just move to it, like bloop, blink.
There's probably still a way to do
actually follow the path that the
because that would be a different algorithm, but I want to say there's like a pathfinding algorithm where you assign like costs or something, and then there's a way to calculate that.
Yeah, I tried to use something before I wrote this one that was somebody else's code, and it half worked, but I couldn't figure out why. Like I was struggling to understand their reasoning behind what they were doing, so I just wrote it from scratch.
Yeah.
The checking each direction individually was working, but there was no way to check. I didn't have it set up so it like would check forever. I manually set it to check left, then up, then left, then up. And then like then down, then right, then down, then right on its way back through. And I would just have to pick a level of depth there, like how many turns do I think a potential unit could ever have? Because if I wasn't telling the code to check another level of depth, eventually it stopped checking.
Yeah, I think recursion would definitely be the way to handle that, but I don't know how well GameMaker supports recursion. Seems like creating custom functions in GameMaker, when I tried doing it, it really wasn't trivial on doing that. It's like, oh, you had to go and do a bunch of weird stuff to make a custom function. Whereas if you did do it in Unity, creating functions in recursion are pretty easy. You just watch out for infinite loops.
Oh yeah, I've been hitting those very often.
Because in Unity, if you press the play button and you hit an infinite loop, then you got to basically kill the entire Unity editor. There are scripts that will save your game before you go into play mode. So I always drop one of those in so it'll actually save before I press the play button, because eventually all of us are going to write an infinite loop. And
oh, yeah. No, I do them all the time. GameMaker has like this little stop button where it will close the compiler window. But if you were to actually create the executable and run it, then yeah. But there is an escape clause in the GameMaker like preview run. So if you do trigger an infinite loop, you can still stop it.
Yep. Yeah. There is a way. I mean, I would have thought by now Unity would have fixed this problem. But there is a way to like go in and attach a Visual Studio process to that
Yeah.
and go in and change your variable and just to get it out of the loop. But for me, it's easier just to kill the process and restart Unity.
Yeah. Although that's actually a neat feature, just attaching Visual Studio, and you can just pause at any point and see what's going on.
It seems like
Yeah.
it still requires like changing the variable to get out of the loop to
Yeah.
break it out. Which
Yeah, there was. I've seen that with Game Maker too, where the last line of the loop, you do something like add 1 to the variable and set some kind of thing where, like, if it reaches 1,000,000, then break the loop, just to have some like. If it works like it's supposed to, then it should be done before that counter reaches 1,000,000, and you're fine. It works. Nobody ever knows any different.
that
But
is
if it does lock up, and then that thing will count, that'll all it's be doing, and its loop is counting that variable up, then it will break out of the loop after, 45 seconds or something.
I know if you are using Playmaker will do that. If you create an infinite loop within the state machine, the FSM, then after like 1,000 loops, it will say, "Hey, you're in an infinite loop," and then it will let you close it gracefully. But I guess it's like, well, if you're doing it in the script, they expect you to know what you're doing, and like allocating another variable to count the number of loops is just unnecessary memory allocation, so they don't do it.
And basically, like, you're responsible for your own failsafe.
It's like, here's the gun. If you shoot yourself in the foot, then it's not our fault.
I've actually done that, like writing like business software code. Like, okay, I need a recursive loop to make sure I process all the elements in this list or whatever, and like I'm gonna put a check in to make sure that if I go through the loop and don't change anything, then it exits.
Yeah.
Very cool. So, Dylan, did you have any other projects or anything else this month?
Nah.
Okay, so yeah, check out Dylan Wolf. He's dylanwolf.com. Dylan Wolf on Twitter. Joe Miller, he's doublesquarellc.com and Double Square Joe, I think, on Twitter. I'm Levi D. Smith, GA Tech Grad on Twitter, everywhere else. So anyway, that's it for September 2018. We'll be back in a month. Thanks everyone for watching on YouTube, listening on iTunes and Google Store, and everyone else.